All right, so Pinecreek was actually in a formal debate. And I believe that's the first time he's been in an actual debate for a long time. Normally, what Pinecreek does, even when he has Christians, is normally he does his Pinecreek methodology, which is ask you a series of leading questions to try and get you to doubt your position. Now, I was asked by JB, what's the matter with that? Well, he's playing teams, first of all. If you are now, full disclosure. First of all, full disclosure, Trent was 100 times more credible as far as I'm concerned, 100 times better look for Christianity than Gary Habermas. So props, Trent. Well done. Good, gentlemanly, intelligent. Obviously, atheists don't believe. I don't think he scored any points and had atheists believing in a resurrection, but at least it was a good look for Christianity. So props, respect, Trent. Well done. Pinecreek, a good look for Pinecreek too. He was civilized and decent, and he did not fall back on his usual Pinecreek methodology. Let me run my questions and my scripts on you and try to score points, as I've criticized the methodology in the past. So JB asked me, what's wrong with this methodology? Well, JB, the reason why you don't see a flaw in it is because you sometimes play teams. First of all, he's playing teams. If you are an atheist, go watch, please, I promise you, I beg you, go watch Joe Answers from Reason and Dave Rollins. Why? They're not playing teams. They're actually really good critical thinkers, and you can trust their process. Why? They aren't just trying to score points against Christianity and for atheism. The reason why you don't see the flaw in his methodology, JB, is because you want him to score the points. You're a liberal Democrat, I think. Assume a liberal Democrat is on his channel. You want to give and take. You would want that liberal Democrat to make some points to him. Go, I can't wait till Elizabeth Warren's on Pinecreek Doug. I can't wait till she says, well, don't you think corporations are corrupt? She would never get the opportunity to say that. Why? Because his methodology reserves he takes all the power from the interlocutor, and he reserves the right to ask all the questions. And then he automatically starts moving people to undercut them, to make them look credible. I can give you a perfect example. Here's a question he's asked 100 times. Do you believe Jesus walked on water? Now, why is he asking that? He knows that he's asking that to undercut. He's putting the Christian in a box, and not a good or legitimate box. If you're a Christian, you can only answer it one of two ways. If you say yes, and the Christian's aware of this too. I've been under his line of inquiry. The Christian is aware of this. I'm being played. They're not always aware of how. So why is he asking that question? Because you only have two choices if you're the Christian. You say, yes, Jesus walked on water. Now all of a sudden, every atheist, you've been discredited with every atheist. They go, oh my God, this guy will believe anything. This guy's a total dupe. He's credulous. We can't take him seriously. If you say no, then you lost all the Christians. He's not a real Christian. There's no way you can win. And he does that, he does it semi-consciously, but he's doing it almost all the time. Imagine if Elizabeth Warren went in, JB, and all he did was ask her questions to undercut her position as being a liberal Democrat. You'd cry foul within 2 minutes. You'd be like, I want the tables turned. I want you to defend yourself. So this time he went into an actual debate, and you see exactly why he uses his methodology, because in an actual formal debate, it's a lot harder to score points for atheism. Atheists will insist that he did, but no Christian would probably insist that he scored points. It was pretty much a draw. It's almost exactly how you'd expect a debate like this to go. Now, full disclosure, the reason why I paid attention to Pinecreek Doug so much to begin with is there are a whole bunch of different atheists, but the two main categories for the purposes of this video. You got your A-listers, your Matt Dillahunty, your Seth Andrews, your Aaron Ra, and your Anthony Magbasco. Those are like the big four of the people in this space, right? Those are the new four horsemen. Those guys are setting the world on fire, and everybody. Now, then you got the up-and-coming content creator atheists. Your Paula Gia, your Drew, Shannon Q. I guess Shannon Q's kind of an A-lister. She's kind of a big star, so Shannon Q's kind of an A-lister. But your Drew, your Viced Rhino, your content creator atheists, if they keep going, they will become A-listers relatively soon. Paul Gia and Drew, as I've said, have the most integrity of the B-listers, the up-and-coming content creators. Of the up-and-coming content creators, Pinecreek had a special place. He's the only one that you had to pay attention to. That's flattering. That's not an insult. Why? Because he was the only one who was intelligent enough and innovative enough that if he were your opponent, you had to kind of figure out what he was doing. Why? Because he could be really effective. He's the only one who was claiming scalps. He's the only one that was able to actually, go deconvert people. Realistically. Some of the others may have done it, but that person was, basically a quick church and they were gone. They had already deconverted. You had to pay attention to him. Why? He's intelligent, which all the other guys are pretty much intelligent, but he's innovative. Innovative is a rare skill. When you stumble upon somebody who's innovative, you got to kind of work with them a little and figure them out, especially if they're your opponent. Why? Because they can be really effective. Left to his own devices and gone on to perfect his corrupt methodology, it would have, scored a lot of points for atheism. You see what happens when he deliberately defangs himself, though. Did he score a whole bunch of points in this and I missed it? No, he did not. Why? Because he deliberately defanged himself, and I respect him for it, but now, Pinecreek, you see the difference. If you're not asking all the questions and moving people to the weakest possible, first of all, it's an easy thing to do. Okay? If you're just trying to discredit somebody or make them look foolish, I could do it. If I have a YouTube channel, if I had Carlo Rovelli on my channel, the greatest physicist alive today, one of the best world's most preeminent physicists, I could make him look like an idiot if I'm asking all the questions. Easily. It's not a challenging thing to do. It's not a good look. It's not. And so I was paying attention to him 2 or 3 years back a lot. Why? Because I had to figure out the mechanism. Then once you figure out the mechanism, you don't have to bother with it anymore. Why? Because he's not that great at it. He's better than everybody else, but he's not that great at it, honestly. I'm telling you the truth. Pinecreek, and you could, if you're listening, I don't know if you're listening, but any of you can do this check. Okay, I'm making this video. I'm going to post this video. I almost promise you there will be no meaningful challenges in the comments section. Why? There never are. There never are. Why? Because everybody knows. Believe me, I've dealt with atheists enough now. If I were missing the mark, there'd be 100 people lining up telling me where to go. And some of the people listening to this video are going to be Pinecreek's audience. And if I were telling you anything at all, there'll be 1 or 2 people who challenge me a little. Maybe one guy will say, "You're an idiot." Yeah, that guy will probably show up. "You're an idiot, Craig." Okay. That guy will probably show up. But other than that, there's going to be no meaningful challenge in the comment section. I promise you. Why? Because there almost never is. No atheist has ever accused me of lying. Why? Because I do not. And I'm about to tell you stuff about what about everything that's going to be really insightful. And Pinecreek, I don't dislike you. Accuse me of dislike. I actually like you. I was on Nathan's channel just last Friday or 2 Fridays ago or something, and Pinecreek was there. I thought he was fun. We had a good time. He pulled out a picture of Raquel Welch and said, "See, maybe there is a God." It was funny. It was charming. Pinecreek can be witty and engaging and charming when he wants to be. And in this debate, his behavior was impeccable, almost. I mean, he was civilized and decent. I don't think he did anything that I thought was inappropriate or anything wrong. Basically, you were good. You were great, Pinecreek. And respect for doing it all above ground and putting your sword down. Respect. Why? Because that's how you got to do it. It's not going to be anywhere near as effective. You're not going to score all these fake points, but it's the right way to do it. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. The main thing. Before I go, I might do a play-by-play on the debate. If you want me to, let me know. I doubt I will, because I want to just get to the really important thing. The really important thing, let's start with the flying man. Okay? The flying man is what Pinecreek thinks is a slam dunk argument against the resurrection. Now, I don't know if he's repeated some of the criticisms. As far as I know, I'm the only one who said this. It's not it's not that great of an argument for atheists. It's really not. Now, some of you who are his audience, "Oh, my head's going to fall off. Oh my God, it's so fantastic." No, it really isn't. And I can prove it to you. And Pinecreek kind of knows it isn't too. Why? Because if he thought it was such a slam dunk, he would do exactly what Ben Watkins does when he thinks he has a slam dunk argument. What does he do? He puts it on Twitter right away. So everybody can take shots at it, everybody can object to it, everybody can challenge it. Pinecreek keeps his flying man sheathed. Why? So he can hide it from view and it never becomes a target. But consequently, it's nowhere near as powerful of an argument as he thinks it is. First of all, he's repeated this criticism. I don't know that anybody else says that. This is my criticism. This criticism is 100% legitimate. It's not properly analogous. It's not properly analogous at all. He pulls it out a little in this debate. It isn't. First of all, full disclosure, before I go into Flying Man and tell you what's wrong with the mechanics of it, full disclosure, I am not a great believer in resurrection arguments. I do not think that you can compile a list of material facts, present them to an atheist. The underlying premise, I think, is flawed. If I present the atheist with these material facts, it's resurrection or bust. They're going to have to admit that it's a resurrection because that's the only logical conclusion. I don't really think it works like that. And I think it's pretty easy for an atheist to come up with other alternative explanations that are, to the atheist, a lot more plausible. Why? Because they're naturalists. They're committed naturalists. So almost all atheists, to a man, were not convinced, I'm guessing, by Trent. They probably thought he was civilized, decent, and intelligent, but I'm almost positive nobody said, wait, he's right. Those facts do point to a resurrection. Because it doesn't really work like that. So I don't think the resurrection arguments are all that powerful. I don't think they put some points on the board for Christianity. I really don't. Pinecreek's objection, he objects in a couple of key ways. I think those objections resonate with his audience completely, and I think they're kind of fair, given where an atheist is coming from. I don't think those, he said something like, this isn't really strong evidence. This wouldn't convince me. So then he pulls out his Flying Man. Now, his Flying Man is not properly analogous. It's not. Matter of fact, it entirely misses the point. He says, while he's using it, his new tagline is, you and I are the same, me and the Christian, and I want to see where that belief switch turns on. That's his new line. Okay, assuming that's true, you're missing the point entirely. There is no amount of compilation of material facts that turns the belief on or off in a Christian. I can prove this to you right now. Go to any church, any town, USA. Any church. Also, before I go into this, okay, this is going to make your head explode if you're an atheist. So if you're an atheist, hang on tight. Deep breaths before I say this. I promise you, you are gonna like this, but I promise you, it's the God's honest truth. So take a deep breath and listen. Promise you, this is true. Resurrection is by definition more plausible than atheism. No, you've gone too far, Craig. I'm going to kill you. I swear to God that's true, and it's not negotiable. I swear to God that's true, and it's not negotiable. Okay, if I told you, first of all, there's no such thing. Let's just clear this up right now. There's no such thing as objectively plausible. That's why I don't have any faith, pun intended, in a resurrection argument. Why? Because there's no such thing as objectively plausible. There's plausible to this type of person, plausible to that type of person, plausible to this group of people over there. And plausibility is, by definition, consensus. And entailed in the definition of plausibility is how easy is it for somebody to believe it. So by definition, if you have 1 billion Christians who believe in a resurrection, which you have north of 1 billion, and you have roughly 200 to 300 million atheists, Christianity, by definition, is the more plausible alternative. I'm sorry for pointing out the obvious, but that's a fact, and there's no negotiating it. If I said Christianity is more popular than atheism, you'd have to agree. Why? Because more Christians are atheists. Same thing for plausibility. There is no such thing as objectively plausible. That's why I don't have any faith in the resurrection arguments. Why? Because the resurrection is not plausible to an atheist, period. They don't believe in miracles at all. You'd have to get them to try and find a miracle that they can believe in before you pull out the centerpiece miracle of Christianity. And no amount of these are the facts as they are compiled. The atheist has two key lines of argumentation. They're either going to undercut the so doubt in the facts. First of all, the book was written 2,000 years ago. That's going to make it eminently less plausible to a lot of atheists. A lot of stuff could have happened 2,000 years. That's just just how they think. I don't know what a criteria is for an atheist to believe in a miracle. I could take a really good educated guess. Have to be present tense. Have to be videotaped. They'd have to maybe know the person. They saw a miracle in a guy in a wheelchair, and then the guy walked. How many facts would they have to have firsthand acquaintance with? Like maybe they knew the person for 5 years, and they knew he was in a wheelchair. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying it all that well, but I think you get the idea. The skeptic is going to keep skepticking. And they're going to lean towards naturalism automatically. And for the reason that Pinecreek Doug articulated pretty well in this video. They know for a fact that naturalism is true. So Pinecreek said it. I know for a fact that people lie. So it's more plausible to him that Paul lied. Then you got to go, well, Paul's such a good man. You're in a place where they can just sow doubt. As they say in politics, if you're explaining, you're losing. You start explaining, you're losing. You're not gaining any converts. You're just, the atheist is sowing doubt. It's not that hard for an atheist to do. It's not an argument that favors Christianity at all. It's not an argument that's going to put points on the board for Christianity. Trent Horn presents about as strong a case for it as can possibly be made. But I'm pretty sure, I'll listen to him and Cam came on and they analyzed it. I bet you $1,000 I could guess at what things they say were defeaters or undercutters. Now, the real question is, and this is why the flying man ain't all that, Doug. I promise. Listen to me. I'm trying to help you, Doug. You don't hear this right. You're better than everybody else at counter-apologetics. Do you want to be great? Because if you want, you aren't that good. You're better than everybody else. It's not saying anything. Why? Because most of those other guys are awful at it. I don't even bother watching their videos. And I'm not saying that to disrespect them. I'm saying that because that's a God's honest truth. I don't even bother watching. Why? Because I can't even sit through them. The counter-apologetics are really bad. Yours are good. Yours are effective. Effectiveness and innovative. I'm trying to get you, I want you to be great. Why? Because we need the strongest possible opponent that we can get. If we're going to do this correctly, we need Pinecreek Doug. We need him. He's the only one who's innovative and can do this correctly. I have 100% confidence that I could literally prove some of the things that I believe. Literally. I don't think I can prove a resurrection. I'm pretty sure that can't be done. I doubt it. I haven't even bothered to try. Why? I don't think that's an achievable goal. I really don't. That's why I don't think it's a great argument for Christianity at all. Now, but the key is, your flying man misses the mark entirely. The question you got to ask yourself, let's assume every atheist listening to me, you don't believe in God, correct, and you certainly don't believe somebody rose from the dead. But I'm telling you the God's honest truth that more than 1 billion people believe that and believe that pretty easily. So you got to ask yourself a question. This is what Pinecreek Doug never does. He never asks challenging questions of himself. He never tries to actually figure things out and see through and understand things. He only tries to debunk them. That's why he's not that great. If he tried to actually process and figure out, if he became a little bit more like the philosophical atheists who try to figure things out and think critically and assess honestly, not to play teams, not to score points, just because, he could be a lot more effective, ironically. I promise. I sit down with atheists and I ask all I do is ask questions to investigate. That's all I do. One day, pretty, right now I have a rinky-dink channel. Everyone understands that. Okay, one day I think I'm going to be really effective at this. I think I'm going to be really good at convincing people of what I think I know. Really good at it. Why? Because all I'm doing right now is gathering information. That's the first step if you want to be great. Pinecreek hasn't started that step. I sat in with 3 times he inquired about my religious experiences. 3 times. He doesn't know a single thing about my religious experiences. That should bother him. That should bother anybody who cares about the truth. I promise you that's true. He couldn't tell you a single thing about my religious experiences, and I was inquired of him 3 times about them. Why? Because he never asks investigating questions. He never tries to understand something. He just automatically goes to, let me show you that it's not God, let me try to debunk it. Makes him weaker. I said 3 years ago, in New York, they'd see him coming a mile away. I promise you that's the God's honest truth. I'm not saying that to disrespect him. I'm not saying that to praise New Yorker. In New York, everybody's street smart and intelligent. And they see through stuff like that immediately. Everybody would see him coming a mile away. Wouldn't work at all. He's the best guy you got on the B squad by far. He's the most effective guy in the B squad by far, but he's not all that good. Now, let's get back to the issue at hand. So a resurrection is by definition more plausible than Christianity. North of 1 billion people believe in a resurrection, which means it is eminently more plausible to a bigger consensus. Plausibility is consensus. If I told you Christianity is more popular than atheism, there's nothing you could do to dispute it. Why? Because of north of 1 billion Christians and there's 300 or 400 million atheists. Same thing with plausibility. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. Plausibility is entailed by consensus. It is more easy for people to believe what you, the atheist, consider outlandish. You, the atheist, consider outlandish and, I can't even believe somebody believes something so ridiculous. That's what they said about Trent. I can't believe somebody so intelligent can believe such, obvious fallacies, obvious falsehoods. So why is the question? Here's the real answer. I promise you this is the real answer. I swear to God and everything holy that this is the God's honest truth and this is the real answer. If you listen to this, you'll get real insight. Pinecreek, if you listen to this, you will get real insight. And you can update your flying man so that it's actually analogous. Don't know how you do it, but it can be done. The reason why it's so easy for Christians to believe in God is because every Christian on earth, even the most wussified wussy of the Sunday Christians, even the most sellout milk of toast, I voted for Hillary Clinton because Trump is so awful Christian. So even that guy believes deep down in his little heart of hearts and believes really, really strongly, even the wussy Christians, even the milk of toast Christians, that God is omnipotent. Promise that's true. And if they don't believe God is quite omnipotent, they believe God is powerful, really, really, really awesomely powerful in ways that humans cannot fathom or understand. I can literally prove this. Prove it. Literally prove it. Every Christian believes that deep down inside. How do I know that for a fact? Because every single solitary Christian on earth prays. Even a wussy Christian. Even the most milk of toast. I'm voting for Hillary. I can't take Trump anymore. He's so awful. Even that guy, prays sometimes. The kid gets in a car accident, is in the hospital. That guy's going to get on his face and he's going to pray. Which tells you that deep down inside, no matter how watered down their beliefs may be internally, when push comes to shove, every Christian I know prays. That is very telling. It means that every Christian believes deep down that God is powerful beyond all human understanding, or you would never bother to pray. Even the most weak, insignificant prayer you can think of. What most Christians are praying, honestly, please don't let my wife catch me looking at porn. Please don't let my wife, I swear to God, that's what most Christians, a lot of Christians are praying that. Even the most weak prayer, insignificant prayer you can think of. Please don't let my boss let me be late, catch me being late for work. Means you really think God is powerful in really, really mysterious ways. People say, pray for Ukraine, right? That's the one that's going out nowadays. Pray for Ukraine. What does that mean? There are people praying for Ukraine. That means you literally think God could either slow down the transport of 30 million, the convoy of 30 million, give the guerrilla warriors, the right ideas to attack the supply lines. You are talking about power, and this is a logical conclusion. Atheist head's going to fall off with that. Oh my God, it's the most irrational thing I've ever heard. It's not that irrational, guys. It's the most logical conclusion on earth. Think it through. Think it clearly. Listen carefully. Listen carefully, please, because I'm telling you the God's honest truth. I didn't say God exists. I didn't say it's evidence that God exists. I said none of those things. Correct? The way you got to think of it is if God exists, if there is a God, that being would be the sovereign creator of heaven and earth. That being would have created, for example, every note of every music ever played. Would have created you and your friends and all your thoughts and feelings and your family. So it's perfectly logical, if there is a God, to automatically think that being is powerful beyond anything I could possibly fathom. It says that in the Bible too. I am able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you hope or even think or even ask. So every Christian, intuitively, every Christian prays. And it could be the simplest prayer on earth. Please don't let my boss catch me being late for work. That means you think God could actually have the phone ring. Somebody put it on someone's heart to call your boss. And then he's on the phone and he's sneaking the door. He doesn't catch you. Every Christian thinks God is omnipotent or awesomely powerful to one degree or another. How confident they are in that, not sure. But every Christian believes it really deep down inside. How do I know that for a fact? Because every Christian prays. And every atheist, if they were a Christian at one point, believed that to some degree once upon a time. And if you're an atheist, when you prayed, you believe that too. Because you prayed for things that only some really awesomely powerful being could have produced. I think, correct? Make my parents stop fighting for one night. Please, God, make my parents stop fighting for one night. Maybe somebody prayed that. The point is, if you believe that, and every Christian believes that, a resurrection ain't that heavy of a lift. Sorry, that's the God's honest truth. A resurrection ain't that heavy of a lift. It's not a big struggle if you believe that God is awesomely powerful, which every Christian intuitively believes, promise. It's not a big struggle. A resurrection. The atheist is thinking of it backwards. It's not natural. No, it's not natural. It's supernatural. It's by definition not possible. That's the whole point. If somebody, I guess that's why Christians think the resurrection's a good argument, because if you can get someone to believe the resurrection, I guess they're a Christian, I guess. It's not a good argument. Why? Because nobody believes it based on a collection of material facts. I can prove that too. Go to any town, any church, USA, anywhere on earth. Ask any Christian under the sun, do you believe in the resurrection? Yes, I do. So then you obviously think that, that the two women found the empty tomb and nobody would have a testimony of two women, because back then, women weren't even allowed to testify in court. You know what they'd say? Come again? What? Two women? What on earth are you talking about? What on earth are you talking about? What two women? That's exactly what they say, I promise. Why? Nobody knows any of those facts. The things you guys were discussing, you go to any town, any church, USA, they don't even know what you're talking about. The things you were asking him, Book of John, the things you were asking were borderline ludicrous based on what actually produces belief in people. That's what actually produces belief in people. The resurrection ain't that heavy of a lift if you already believe God is awesomely powerful. God is awesomely powerful. It's a perfectly logical conclusion if there is a God. That God would have to be powerful in ways you could barely fathom. Period. That's the God's honest truth, guys. It has nothing to do with the material facts at all. Most Christians, I've been to church. I promise, I've been to church. I know Christians pretty darn well. Outside of apologetics, this circle that we travel in is very small. When you go to actual church and talk to actual people who attend church, they don't know any of the questions you were asking Trent. Any of them. They don't know the answers to any of them, yet they believe in a resurrection. So the belief switch that you're looking for isn't located where you're looking. That's my point. It's not even close. You are missing the mark entirely. You're off in a totally wrong direction because you've been deluded by apologists and apologetics to think that, because I guess the apologists have convinced you that it's a really groundbreaking, powerful argument. If I line up these facts, it's resurrection or bust. As I said, I don't have any faith in that argument. I don't think it's a strong argument for Christianity, because as Pinecreek and Nathan, are you a Christian now or an atheist? Didn't you become a Christian I don't know where Nathan is now, but Nathan had a perfectly logical thing that he was floating around as a counter explanation for the resurrection. And it accounts for the data points pretty well. And it's eminently more plausible to a naturalist and a non-believer for sure. The naturalist and non-believer is always going to opt for the natural explanation. And that's not a critique of the naturalist, it's just a fact. Pinecreek even said it. I know people lie, so it's more plausible to me that Paul lied. That's where a naturalist is at. If you want to put points on the board, you want to get that guy to believe in something that, for them, it's a stretch. For them, it's a stretch, but that doesn't mean that it's a stretch. Christians believe in a really, really powerful God. Even weak Christians, even like wussified, I swear Trump is awful. Even that Christian. Trump isn't a good representative of Christianity. He's ruined the church. That guy, even that guy, Randall Rouser, yes, even him. Randall Rouser, sounds like Randall Rouser, right? No, it doesn't. I'm just playing. So, props. Oh, so that's it. Those are the facts, guys. And I promise you, Pinecreek, that's the God's honest truth. If you want to get really, really good at counter-apologetics, and I want you to succeed. Why? Because I'm not threatened. The better you get, the easier, the better it is for all of us. Because he's the only one who could get really good. Matt Dillahunty style good. He's the only one in the B squad who could get really good. He's innovative. Innovation is key. Innovation is key. Now, it isn't properly analogous. And if you're an atheist, here's some really good insight into most of my dealings with atheists. As a general rule, atheists don't understand analogies at all. They fall apart on analogies, and they fall apart at symbolic thinking. If you think about that, that's really not all that surprising. Deconverted man, for example, is actually a really intelligent guy. You would never know that by his handling of analogies. What is the problem? He always literalizes them. Always literalizes them. That's really important insight into atheists. Why? Because you're doing that a lot with spiritual stuff. Literalizing it. A lot of you are Bible literalists, more so as much as fundamentalist Christians. As much as fundamentalist Christians, you literalize scriptures. Okay, that's not how, I don't think that's how scriptures are intended to be read at all. Metaphorical truths. Does it intuitively true? Does it feel right, man? How's it feel, bro? See, I was a feelings person before I became a Christian. I was an actor and a musician, among other things. But those are the things I identified most strongly with. I was an actor and a musician before I became a Christian. Really good at both. Do say so myself. Really good. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was great. I was way better at acting. Everybody used to recognize I was really good at acting. When I was in high school, in 8th grade, I got best actor, biggest flirt, best smooth talker. Probably a lot of you could imagine that's, and I got it again senior year. Didn't get best looking, missed it by like 2 votes. Should have gotten best looking. I was robbed of that. No, Willie Jacobs was the best looking. So I've always been an actor, always been a musician. Nobody really thought I was any good at music until I had my own band. I was good at songwriting, but I'm only okay. As you can tell by listening to me sing, I'm passable. I'm good at punk rock. I'm good at like being aggressive and singing like aggressive Rolling Stone songs. I see a red dot and I want to paint it black. No colors anymore. Oh, wow, that was off key. Can be good at singing. You can be good at singing Rolling Stones songs. Karaoke, I can pull off Rolling Stones. I pull off Green Day, Holiday. I pull off Clash songs. I pull off anything that's edgy, and I can just kind of fake it and be aggressive. I'm good at that. I was good at that as a band, as a lead singer in the band, and I was good at writing songs. But nobody thinks I'm all that talented of a singer. That's my only point with that little ramble. So that's my only point. But I was a feelings guy. Intuitions. Acting is all intuition. All intuition. They tried to turn it into methodology. They called it method acting. And I was at odds with the people who were trying to train us in method acting. There's a whole story in and of itself. There is a methodology to spiritual experiences. There is a methodology. It is not just an art form. There is a science to it, and I've said this 1,000 times in my video, and nobody goes exploring. But you can go exploring. You can start with David Yardley and find out what self-transcendent experiences are and how they can be cultivated and how can they be cultivated to make them more real to you, the person practicing them. That's the God's honest truth, guys. They don't just happen to people and they're like the weather. Spiritual experiences have to be actively sought after by you. They're by choice, and you can amplify them for yourself on purpose. And there is a science and a methodology to that. And as I've said, one day I'm going to put videos up on these things where you can click on the link and you can play along with the worship music. And you can decide for yourself if you feel something akin to the peace of God. I'll tell you exactly what a lot of you are going to say. Yeah, I do. It's not God, though. Okay, it might not be God, but you're going to feel. My sister felt it. She came to my apartment. God, I love it out here in California. It feels so peaceful. My wife and I will tell her, well, that's the presence of God, baby. That's the presence of God. Now, you could dispute that there is something called that tangible, but it's not just Christians who can perceive that. It's not. I've run into a lot of people who perceive that immediately. And then once you have a religious belief, religious experiences can be actively cultivated, they can be amplified, so they're really strong and powerful and convincing to the person experiencing them. That doesn't mean it's God. That does not mean it's God. It doesn't mean I'm right. But there is a science to that, and it can be actively cultivated, amplified, and turned up. And when Christians actually hear about a resurrection, they are hearing it. To make the flying man properly analogous, you'd have to plug in the actual thing that produces belief, and that is God. God is awesomely powerful. So you'd have to plug that analogy in. So you do something like, 200 years ago, someone flew over the Grand Canyon. Do you believe me? All this stuff about written in books, and it's all gobbledygook. No Christian at church, no average everyday Christian who all believe in a resurrection knows any of that stuff about Joseph Smith, about any of it. They don't know any of it. Promise. Go ask people at church. Go to church sometime and ask. Nobody knows any of the apologetic stuff. Apologists know that stuff pretty cold. Nobody else. The 500, nobody knows any of that. I promise. I've been at church. I know Christians really well. They don't know that stuff. Apologists know that stuff. It's not common knowledge out there in the church. They believe in a resurrection because they believe deep down inside in their heart of hearts that God is awesomely powerful beyond all human understanding. That's a logical presupposition. If there is a God, that's a completely logical conclusion. It's why they believe so easily in a resurrection. If you believe that God is awesomely powerful, resurrection ain't a heavy lift at all. It's not even close. So to make it properly analogous, you would have to plug in, do you believe me that the flying man flew over the Grand Canyon? Then you'd have to put in some sort of machine or contraption that, enables people to fly because it makes them lighter than the air, because it defibrillates them and makes them lighter than the air. Now, do you believe me? There's written in a book, there's a machine or contraption that enables people to fly because it makes them lighter than the air, defibrillates their material, their body. No, I still don't believe you. Okay, now you see that machine every day in your own house, and you think you know for a fact that that machine exists, because that's what you taught. That would be properly analogous. Do you believe me that man flied? Yeah, of course. Why? Because I see that machine every day in my own house. I'm pretty sure that machine exists, and I'm pretty sure that machine can make somebody fly. I'm almost positive of that. Ergo, flying man ain't a heavy lift either. You plug in the proper analogy, and it becomes easy. The resurrection is only a challenge for atheists to believe. Why? Because they're committed to naturalism. They have prior commitments that, if you want to get to the real hub of this philosophically, I think the real route of apologetics that's going to be effective is to undercut the metaphysical substrates, to undercut the preloaded metaphysical commitments that actually produce atheism. There are some that are compatible with atheism that are more plausible. Maybe I shouldn't get into this philosophy. Pinecreek Doug hates philosophy. Why? Because philosophy is what's going to really settle this. Go watch. There was on Rebecca's channel. Rebecca, if you're listening, hello. On Rebecca's channel, there was a discussion between Danny and someone who was a mathematical fictionalist. Watch an atheist try and defend mathematical fictionalism, and you'll see it's not a defensible position. The atheist falls apart. Why? Because it's incoherent, doesn't make any sense. Now, there was another atheist who I was talking to in the chat, Dharma Defender. Pretty sure he said he was a nominalist. Almost positive he said to me he was a nominalist, and that he thinks that Quine is a really strong, compelling argument, but he's still a nominalist. Okay, that's a defensible position. That's consistent with atheism, sort of, but it's not 100% commitment. It's a defendable position for sure. Fictionalism is not. The guy was trying to argue that most physicists don't think math, maybe I'm talking over people's heads. Most physicists do not think math is invented. They think it's discovered. And the guy was trying to say, no, but, a million years ago, there was no such thing as math. Yeah, but a million years ago, if two brontosaurus walked on a field and then two other brontosaurus followed them onto that field, you'd have 4 brontosauruses just because there was nobody to plug in the symbols. Math is just symbols to express immaterial, invisible, transcendent truths. Math. That's why I have the arguments from math, and I'm going to start working on those. Those are going to be stronger than resurrection arguments. Trent, you do some of those that are good. Metaphysics of math. Those can be upgraded. I'm not 100% convinced on the Aristotelian arguments either. They need to be upgraded for the modern world. But they can be upgraded. Pinecreek, you want to beat me to the punch? Upgrade the flying man. The flying man is not properly analogous. If you made it properly analogous, you could possibly construct it so that it's a really powerful argument. But you have to really think as to where that belief switch turns on, which means you've got to start investigating, just having honest, open-ended questions. Do more philosophy. I know you don't like it, but it's going to make you better at what you do. Why? Because philosophy is actually thinking through things. And your flying man is not properly analogous. I'm not making that up to discredit it. It isn't. The thing that actually produces the belief is not in the flying man. It is some great concoction thing that the person really honestly believes in that can create, to enable the man to fly. How you put that in as an analogy, I don't know. But if you work on it and you plug it in, that could be a really powerful argument. Could potentially challenge. Ben, did you hear me? Ben does this. Ben, try the flying man and try and make it properly analogous. I just assigned you. Yeah, you give out homework, Craig. Give out homework. Stephanie, I don't know. Do something. I've got about it, Craig. Thank you. Oh, so smash them. I'll go Old Testament on their ass. They'll be sorry they ever met me. Okay, calm down, Craig. You're nailing it, Craig. You're nailing it. Thank you, Stephanie. I understand that I'm nailing it. You don't have to reinforce. I'll go Old Testament on their ass. They'll be sorry they ever met me. All right, thank you. That's a little bit too intense, Stephanie. Thank you. Rebecca. I'm here too, Craig. You sound just like